Have you ever wondered why some people carry symptoms of trauma, anxiety, hypervigilance, emotional exhaustion, or chronic stress, even when their ACE score says they experienced low adversity? That question is exactly why many clinicians, researchers, and culturally responsive practitioners began expanding the traditional ACE framework. Many individuals who identify as members of the BIPOC community, as well as those in marginalized communities, trauma was never only inside the home. Sometimes trauma was the environment, sometimes it was racism, sometimes it was survival. Sometimes it was constantly having to suppress emotions just to stay safe. And traditional ACE scores often did not fully account for that reality. Today, we're discussing the culturally informed ACE framework, what it is, why it matters, and how chronic cultural stress becomes embodied in the nervous system. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. The original ACE study was developed in the 1990s through research conducted by the CDC and Kaiser. It focused on 10 categories of childhood adversity that include physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, neglect, domestic violence, parental substance use, incarceration, and household dysfunction. The research was groundbreaking because it helped connect childhood adversity to long-term physical and mental health outcomes later in life. But over time, many clinicians and scholars noticed limitations. The original ACE framework was heavily focused on family and household experiences. It was also largely based on white middle-class populations. And many people began asking, what about the trauma that comes from systems, culture, racism, oppression, and survival stress? Because adversity does not only happen inside homes, it can happen inside communities, inside schools, healthcare systems, and society itself. A culturally informed ACE framework expands the lens of trauma. It recognizes that experiences like racism, discrimination, poverty, community violence, and historical trauma can deeply impact the nervous system too. This expanded approach may include experiences such as racism and discrimination, colorism, exposure to police violence, immigration trauma, medical racism, chronic invalidation, religious or cultural shame, bullying related to race, sexuality, disability, or language, household instability, community grief, and parentification that's connected to survival stress. For many Black individuals, and for many Black women especially, trauma may not always look like one catastrophic event. Sometimes it looks like years of emotional suppression, years of hyperindependence, years of being praised for survival while silently being overwhelmed. A child may technically score low on the traditional ACE questionnaire while still growing up with chronic racial stress, hypervigilance, fear, economic instability, community violence, and pressure to become emotionally strong too early. A culturally informed framework says those experiences matter too. And more importantly, those experiences affect the body. This is where trauma research, somatic psychology, and nervous system work become incredibly important. Many culturally responsive clinicians like myself connect expanded ACE models with polyvagal theory, racial trauma theory, liberation psychology, intersectionality, historical trauma, and somatic healing models. Because the body does not only respond to direct abuse. The nervous system also responds to chronic unsafety, constant vigilance, discrimination, unpredictability, and emotional suppression. For example, many Black women grow up learning, be strong, don't cry, don't make people uncomfortable, work twice as hard, just push through. Over time, survival becomes embodied. The body learns to stay alert, stay guarded, stay productive, and stay emotionally contained. And eventually, many women reach adulthood exhausted without realizing their nervous system has been living in survival mode for decades. And that is not weakness, that is just adaptation. One important critique from culturally responsive clinicians is this: that traditional ACE scores can unintentionally pathologize communities without acknowledging resilience, spirituality, cultural identity, collective care, resistance, joy, and survival wisdom. Because Black communities are not only defined by trauma, there is also healing, creativity, faith, community care, humor, wisdom, music, storytelling, and deep resilience. So many practitioners now pair adversity assessments with conversations around protective factors, embodiment, nervous system regulation, spirituality, cultural identity, community support, and healing-centered engagement. Healing is not only about identifying pain, it is also about reconnecting to safety, identity, and humanity. This conversation deeply connects to what many Black women experience through the Strong Black Woman schema, because many women were conditioned to believe vulnerability is unsafe, rest is laziness, emotions are weakness, and survival must come before softness. But chronic cultural stress lives in the body. It can show up as anxiety, burnout, people-pleasing, hyperindependence, emotional numbness, sleep issues, chronic pain, high blood pressure, digestive problems, or difficulty feeling safe enough to rest. Sometimes women say, "I don't even know how to relax." And often that is not simply a mindset issue. It may be a nervous system adaptation shaped by years of survival. This is why culturally informed healing matters. Not just asking what happened to you, but also asking, what did you have to become in order to survive it? The culturally informed ACE framework reminds us that trauma is not only personal. Sometimes it is systemic, sometimes it's historical, sometimes it is embodied through generations. Epigenetics. And healing must also be culturally responsive, compassionate, and embodied, especially for Black women who have spent years surviving environments that required emotional suppression in order to function. You deserved safety before you learned survival. And healing is not about becoming someone new. Sometimes it is about finally allowing the nervous system to experience what it did not fully receive. That might look like safety, rest, softness, connection, and care. I appreciate you watching today's video. I look forward to coming in for the next one. And until then, take great care.